I wasn't invited to the head table at my own son's wedding. I wasn't even seated in the room. They put me in the kitchen, next to the trash bins, while my son raised a toast to the woman replacing me. They laughed. I listened. I didn't cry. I went home, opened my laptop, and made the call that would bury them all. His biggest competitor? Now my partner? His wife's empire? Now dust under my heel? And my seat at the table? I built a new one, at the top. Before we start, please make sure to like this video and hit that subscribe button so you never miss a story like this, and also comment where you're watching from. Thanks. My name is Evelyn Harper. I'm 62. I raised 3 sons and co-built a family business that now pretends I don't exist. I always imagined my youngest son's wedding as a moment I'd finally be seen. Not celebrated like a queen. No, just seen. Instead, I was handed a folded card that said Evie and pointed toward the kitchen. Not a back table, not a seat near the wall. The literal kitchen. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe a mix-up from a teenage staff member trying to do too much at once. But the look he gave me, bored, dismissive, like I was in the way, told me everything. I pushed through the swinging door, expecting a side room, maybe a temporary waiting area. No, it was the real working kitchen, loud, steaming, full of trays, and tucked in the corner near a mop sink sat a lone round table. On it, a single name. Card. Evie. Not Mom. Not Evelyn. Just a short, casual version of my name, like I was a neighbor invited last minute. I sat there for a full 5 minutes, hoping someone, anyone, would come get me, tell me this was some clerical issue. But instead, one of the staff tried to hand me a tray of champagne glasses, thinking I worked there. That's when I realized this wasn't an accident. Through a narrow crack in the door, I saw the whole room. Jessica, the bride, beaming in. Her lace gown, flanked by her family. Daniel, my baby, my boy who used to beg for bedtime stories, now stood grinning like none of this was wrong. I waited. The speeches started. I leaned forward to hear them, to feel like I was part of it. But the kitchen noise drowned most of it out. Then came Jessica's voice, sharp, high, and polished. "Today, I finally take over as the queen of this family," she said, and the crowd erupted in laughter. Someone shouted, "Where's the old queen?" Another chimed in the kitchen, I think." And the entire room laughed again, including Daniel. I sat perfectly still, both hands pressed to the cold table, staring at the grain of the wood, like it might crack and swallow me. Nora, my sister, tried to slip away and sit with me, but Jessica snapped her back for bridal party photos. I wasn't asked to join any. I sat in that kitchen through the entire dinner, every course, hearing the clatter of forks and bursts of laughter, and no one, not a single soul, opened that door. When the music started and Daniel danced with Jessica's mother, I stopped blinking. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I just left. At home, I changed out of my dress, poured myself a glass of wine, and pulled up the latest shareholder documents. I still had access. They'd forgotten that part. The moment I saw my signature on a document approving a board restructure, I never attended, never signed. I felt something cold settle inside me. That was it. No more doubts, no more excuses. They were phasing me out, personally, legally, financially. I picked up my phone and scrolled past every family name. Then, I stopped at one. Leonard Mitchell, my late husband's oldest business rival. A man I hadn't spoken to in over 3 decades. I hit call. It rang twice. "Leonard," I said when he answered, my voice steady. "It's Evelyn Harper. We need to talk." Leonard didn't hesitate. "I wondered when I'd hear from you," he said, voice just as sharp as I remembered. 33 years of silence didn't need warming up when the fire had never gone out. We agreed to meet discreetly the next morning. His office, early, no paper trail. I barely slept. I laid in bed replaying every second of that wedding, every laugh, every ignored glance, every clink of champagne that didn't include me. Phone buzzed around 7 a.m. Not from my sons, of course, but from Nora. She didn't waste time on small talk. "You know they did that on purpose, right?" she said, like she'd been holding it in. I didn't respond. She kept going. "I overheard Jessica talking to one of her friends at the rehearsal dinner. Said she wasn't about to let the old lady steal her spotlight. Said you were going to be handled quietly. Daniel didn't say a word. I sat there, still in my nightgown, listening to my only sibling confirm that my own son stood by while his wife plotted to erase me from the most important day of his life. They had that table ready for you before you even arrived, Nora added. I heard them joke about it. Make sure she's got a view of the garbage bins. My hands clenched around the phone so tight my fingers went white. I didn't cry. Not even then. Nora paused, her voice softening. Evie, you don't deserve this. I thanked her, hung up, and got dressed with more care than I had in years. Pantsuit, polished heels, no jewelry. Power dressing wasn't for them. It was for me. Leonard's office hadn't changed much. The smell of leather and old wood hit me the moment I walked in, same as it had back when he and my husband were battling for contracts in the late 80s. Leonard stood when he saw me. No handshake. He opened his arms. I didn't move. I'm not here to reminisce, I said. He nodded. All business. Let's talk about those shares, I said, and his eyebrows lifted. You're finally ready? I wasn't the one who stopped being ready, I said, sitting across from him. I slid a flash drive across the table. Everything you need to see. Board structure, my voting power, how they forged my name last month. Leonard plugged it in and scrolled. Then he whistled. They really tried to screw you sideways. And failed, I said. For now. Leonard leaned back. So what do you want, Evie? A buyout? Revenge? I stared at him. I want to burn them slow, not loud. Quiet, controlled, surgical. He smiled. You've always been better than they knew. I want to sell, I continued. But not yet. First, I want them to think I'm gone, that I've given up. I want Jessica to sit in her designer chair and think she's finally won. I want Daniel to look around and not even realize what's missing until it's too late. Leonard's eyes gleamed. And when you sell to me. Full consulting partnership, I said. My name, not buried in footnotes. Deal, he said. No handshake, no toast. Just 2 signatures on a draft and a plan that had waited years to breathe. I left that office not just with leverage, but with oxygen. When I got home, Daniel had left a voicemail. Hey, sorry about yesterday, he said. Jess says maybe the venue staff got things mixed up. Anyway, we're on our honeymoon for 2 weeks, but let's talk when we're back. He ended it with a laugh, like we were friends. Like I was going to forget they locked me in the kitchen while strangers toasted the woman who wants me dead on paper. I played the message again, this time on speaker, as I opened my safe and pulled out the original shareholder contract. 3 signatures. Mine, my late husband's, and Daniel's. My leverage, my weapon. My silence had bought me 30 years of peace. Now it was time to buy something else, war. I didn't delete Daniel's voicemail. I kept it saved right next to the shareholder contract, the digital apology paired with the legal proof of what he'd tried to take from me. For 2 weeks, I said nothing. I didn't answer calls, didn't respond to texts, didn't even tell Nora what I was planning. I went to the office twice, unannounced, just to watch. Sat in the lobby, pretending to be waiting for someone else, watching who came in, who walked out, who smiled too wide, and who avoided eye contact. Jessica came in 3 times, wearing sunglasses indoors, carrying branded coffee cups like she was on the cover of some cheap business blog, all confidence and control. The reception girl called her boss lady, which made me almost laugh out loud. I waited until Daniel and Jessica were back from their honeymoon, then scheduled a boardroom login under my name. No warning, no announcement, just accessed the internal file system through the legacy admin account Leonard's tech team had quietly helped me restore. There it was, the restructure I never approved. A new shareholder alignment with my name forged in perfect digital ink. I clicked deeper. Budget reallocations, staff terminations, new marketing contracts signed by Jessica with my husband's signature stamp next to hers, something she never legally had access to. I stared at that stamp like it was a murder weapon, because that's exactly what it was. They were killing me quietly, not with violence, with bureaucracy. I sent the files to a separate encrypted drive, then to Leonard. No subject line, just the files. That night I called Daniel. I figured it was time. He picked up sounding distracted, annoyed even. Hey, Mom, he said like I'd just interrupted a movie. Did you see the voicemail? I saw the forged vote, I said. Silence. The restructure, I added. My signature. More silence, then a fake little chuckle. What? No, that was… Jessica mentioned that, but… I cut him off. You signed off on it. You knew. Mom, look, it's complicated, he started. But I could hear the fear now, behind the calm. We had to make some decisions quickly. The firm. Don't say firm to me like this is about paperwork, I snapped. You forged a signature to cut your mother out of her own husband's company. You put my name on things I never read, never touched. It was just to smooth things, he mumbled. You weren't really involved anymore. There it was. The truth. The casual knife in the chest. I wasn't involved anymore. I didn't matter enough to include, just enough to use. You could have called me, I said. You could have sat across from me like a man. Jessica thought, he started, and that was the end of the conversation. Jessica thought, I repeated, cold as stone. Jessica thinks a lot, doesn't she? I hung up without waiting for an answer. An hour later, I got an email from the company's legal team requesting my digital consent for minor adjustments to board voting power. They didn't even bother to hide it. They were trying to cover the tracks now, act like it was all just late paperwork. I didn't respond. I printed the email and stapled it to the original shareholder agreement. Next day, a letter showed up in my mailbox. No return address, but I knew the handwriting on the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a glossy flyer for an upscale assisted living facility with a handwritten note. You deserve somewhere peaceful. J. My jaw locked so hard I thought I might chip a molar. I went inside, turned off all the lights, and sat in the dark with that flyer in my lap. Somewhere peaceful. That was her way of saying, get out, disappear, die quietly. I held that paper until dawn. Then I fed it through my shredder, piece by piece, and opened a fresh notebook. Title at the top, Contingency Phase 2. Because they wanted peace. And now they were going to get war. Quiet, slow, satisfying. It started small. First, the cleaning lady who'd been with me for years suddenly stopped coming. Said she got a better offer, didn't say from who, just that someone in the family said you were downsizing soon. Then my bank app glitched, locking me out for 2 days. When I called, they said a request had been filed to merge my personal and joint accounts into a new financial planning service tied to the company's internal treasury arm, something that never existed before this year. I checked the request. Form. The contact email? Jessica's. I didn't say a word. I let it sit. That week, Daniel invited me to dinner. First time in months. Said they wanted to talk through the business stuff like adults. I almost laughed at that. I showed up 10 minutes early. Jessica answered the door with a fake smile and a glass of wine in her hand. You look great, she said, like she didn't hate the skin I lived in. I walked past her, saw Daniel at the dining table looking uncomfortable, napkin already folded, 2 plates out, no extra chair for me. Mom, we're hoping you'll think about making some changes, he said, and I waited. Retirement-type changes, Jessica added, sitting down beside him. You've done so much, really. And now we want you to enjoy your time. Travel, relax. On what money? I asked flatly. You tried to consolidate my accounts. Daniel cleared his throat. That was a miscommunication. You forged my name on a restructuring vote. That was Jessica's idea, he blurted, then caught himself. Jessica's eyes narrowed slightly, but she smiled. We just want to take the pressure off you, Evelyn. Let you live without all the yay noise of corporate nonsense. That noise paid for this house, I said, and for your dress, and for your honeymoon in Santorini. Daniel shifted in his chair. It's not about the past. It's exactly about the past, I snapped. That company carries your father's blood in every dollar it earns. Jessica sipped her wine and set down her glass. We're not trying to erase you, she said. We're trying to protect you. Things are changing. Investors are younger. They don't want a 70-year-old woman listed as a decision maker. I'm 62, I said, and still the largest individual shareholder. For now, she replied, tone too casual. Then she stood and walked over to a side table, pulling out a slim folder and setting it in front of me. Just something. To look at, she said. Inside was a glossy brochure. The Ridge, a luxury-assisted living community 2 counties away. Photos of yoga classes, painting workshops, an on-site spa. They've got a spot open, she said. It's beautiful. And quiet. Daniel stared at the table, didn't say a word. You're serious, I said. Jessica nodded. We want to make sure you're comfortable. You'd still have a small stipend. The trust would cover your needs. My voice didn't raise. Not once. I closed the brochure slowly, placed it back in the folder, and looked at my son. Did your father die for this? I asked. He flinched. Jessica touched his hand. Don't make this emotional, she said. It's logistics and legacy. I stood. You want the house, don't you? Jessica didn't answer, but the silence said enough. It's already being appraised, I added, and watched her blink. You thought I wouldn't notice the real estate agent parked outside last week? Daniel finally looked up, pale now. Mom, please. No, I said. You made this choice when you put me in the kitchen. I walked out without another word, got in my car, drove home. The front door lock had been changed. The key didn't work. I stood there on my own porch with my hand on the knob for 30 silent seconds, then got back in the car, drove to Nora's, and rang her bell. She didn't ask questions, just opened the door, took one look at my face, and said, Tell me everything. I did. Every single piece. The fake vote, the account, merge. The brochure, the lock. You're not staying in that house another night, she said. You stay here until we flip the whole damn board over. I nodded. Then I reached into my purse, pulled out the one thing they hadn't touched, my original shareholder certificate. Signed in my husband's hand, wrapped in plastic and sealed with my initials. They want me erased, I said, but they forgot one thing. What? Nora asked. I looked her straight in the eyes. I built the map. I know where every crack is. I didn't tell anyone where I was for the next 5 days, not even Leonard, and I made sure my car was parked 3 blocks away from Nora's house, under a tree, backed into a driveway that no one used since the old owner died. I disabled location tracking on my phone, paid cash at the corner store for groceries, and moved like someone who had a reason to vanish because I did. I needed them to think I was done, cracked, hiding, or maybe even checked into that little brochure facility they so kindly offered. Nora understood without me having to explain much. She made up the guest room, let me use her laptop, and brewed coffee every morning before I got up like we were kids again, back when sharing a bathroom. Didn't mean stepping over betrayal. The 3rd night in, I checked the business news. Quiet. Too quiet. No public moves. No changes in staffing. Jessica was laying low, probably waiting for confirmation I'd given up. I could picture her telling Daniel not to worry, that she had it all under control, that I was probably cooling off or grieving my relevance. On day 6, Nora came into the living room holding her phone with that face, the one she makes when she's trying not to smile too hard. Daniel's calling me, she said. Do I answer? I nodded. She put it on speaker. Hey, Nora, he said, casual. Have you heard from Mom? No, why? She replied, neutral. She hasn't been answering texts. She missed last week's board session. We're a little concerned. Maybe she's taking time for herself, Nora said, nailing the delivery. You know how exhausting family can be. Daniel laughed awkwardly. Yeah, I guess. Jessica's just worried. Oh, Nora said. That's so sweet of her. I leaned back against the couch and stared at the ceiling while he mumbled something about checking in if I reached out. The call ended. Nora turned to me. They're sweating. Good, I said. But it wasn't enough. I needed more. I needed them to start unraveling without me even touching them. So I made my first real move. I sent Leonard an encrypted message with one instruction. Start a rumor. Nothing provable, nothing traceable, just enough whisper that Evelyn Harper was quietly aligning with a major investor. Unnamed, but definitely not friendly. Within 48 hours, Jessica sent a mass email to the board reassuring them of stability and forward momentum. I knew that tone. She was bluffing confidence, and it made me smile. The next day, the firm's internal HR portal listed an opening for a junior financial director, Jessica's department. She was hiring muscle, probably to dig into accounts, lock things down. Too late. I already had copies of everything I needed. That weekend, I met Leonard in person for the first time since our initial conversation. We sat in a tiny booth at a bakery in the next town over, both of us with coffee we didn't touch. He slid over a folder and said, "You ready for phase 2? I didn't even open it. "Let's make it look like their idea." "Beautiful," he said, and smirked. On the 7th day, I disappeared again. Shut off my phone. Disconnected the landline in Nora's guest room. Left no digital trace. 2. More days passed. Then 3. Jessica filed a missing person notice with the police. Not because she was worried, but because she needed proof of incompetence or incapacity to trigger a power of attorney clause hidden in one of the forged documents. But I wasn't technically missing. I'd mailed a notarized letter to the board saying I was taking a sabbatical for personal wellness. That one piece of paper blocked their move cold. Nora handed me the letter when it arrived, and I could feel the weight of their frustration behind every crease. "You just killed their next 3 plays," she said, grinning. "No," I said, staring at it. "I just bought time for the final one." Because now the rumor was spreading. Leonard had dropped just enough bait in just the right rooms. Jessica's investor meeting in Seattle got canceled. A client she thought was solid started backing away. Their press team had no idea why the company's name was circulating with question marks attached. And all the while, I was sitting in a small spare bedroom at my sister's house, reading books I hadn't touched in years, mapping out timelines, and waiting for the crack in their glass house to split straight through the middle. They wanted a silent exit. Instead, they were about to get a disappearance that screamed. The morning I made the call, I didn't drink coffee, didn't brush my hair, didn't even look in the mirror. I just sat on the edge of Nora's guest bed, holding my phone like it was a detonator and staring at Leonard's contact photo, which was just a gray circle because neither of us had time for niceties like profile pictures. I tapped once, then again, and he picked up on the second ring like he'd been waiting for me. "It's time," I said. No hello, no build-up. "You sure?" he asked, but he didn't sound like he needed the answer. "Yes," I said and hung up. 10 minutes later, my email pinged with an encrypted contract draft. I opened it and saw everything just as we agreed. 33% equity transfer, consulting authority, public press embargo for 1 week, and the kicker, a personal letter of endorsement signed by Leonard himself, stating that I had been the strategic backbone behind her late husband's original build and the only person qualified to finish what he started. I signed, encrypted, and sent it back without blinking. The next hour moved like it was stuck in honey. I paced Nora's hallway, ran my finger over the framed childhood photos on her wall, and thought about how many times I'd sacrificed the truth just to keep peace in a family that was never willing to keep peace with me. Then my phone buzzed again. Leonard had issued the first press leak, not official, just a slow drip. Strategic realignment coming to Mitchell Corp. Sources suggest high-profile former Harper exec involved. That was enough. I knew Jessica would see it within 15 minutes. I also knew she'd call Daniel, and Daniel would call me, and I would not answer. I turned off my phone, made a pot of tea, and watched Nora do crossword puzzles like it was any other Wednesday. That afternoon, my name started trending in 2 mid-tier finance forums. Someone from the old industry days even tweeted, "Did Evelyn Harper just walk back onto the board like a ghost with a flamethrower?" I didn't respond. I let the fire catch on its own. By sunset, Leonard sent me a photo. Jessica, standing in front of the Harper Corp glass wall signage, mid-argument with 2 men in suits whose faces were blurred, but whose postures screamed, "We didn't sign up for this." She looked tired, frazzled, and still overdressed, just like I wanted. That night, Daniel finally cracked. He sent an email, not a voicemail this time. "No mom, no greeting, just, 'What are you doing?'" I didn't answer. The next day, a courier arrived at Nora's with a letter in Jessica's handwriting, fake friendly tone, tight cursive, no sincerity. It read, "We're aware of some rumors and would like to offer you a graceful exit that preserves your dignity and history with the company. Let's avoid ugliness. We're open to a private buyout if you prefer to separate on clean terms." The word dignity nearly made me choke. I tore the letter once down the middle, then again into strips, fed it into Nora's fireplace, and lit it with a single match. The next day, the full press release dropped. Evelyn Harper joins Mitchell Corp as executive strategic partner. Former co-founder of Harper & Sons returns to industry after a decade-long absence. Market analysts speculate this could signal a major disruption. Attached was a photo, me standing beside Leonard, signed contract in one hand, the other hand in my pocket. I wore the navy blazer they gave me for my husband's funeral. Daniel's name didn't appear once in the article. Jessica's name appeared in the final paragraph, mentioned only as the current acting CEO of the declining Harper firm, which saw a 12% dip in investor confidence last quarter. That night, I slept 8 straight hours without waking up. Once. No wine, no pills, just silence, the good kind. They wanted me quiet. They just didn't understand what real quiet looks like when it's aimed with purpose. Because silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. The morning after the press release hit, I made a quiet return to the house they tried to exile me from, not out of nostalgia, but because it was still legally mine, and I wanted to feel the air in my lungs when I walked through the front door. Like nothing had changed, like I hadn't been locked out and pushed aside and treated like a ghost in my own legacy. And when I stepped onto the porch, the same porch they'd changed the locks on, I pulled out the replacement key I'd retrieved from county records under my property rights clause and slid it into the knob without hesitation, because paperwork speaks louder than apologies and signatures last longer than fake smiles, and when the lock clicked, it was the quietest revenge I'd ever tasted. The house was clean, eerily so, like no one had lived in it since they thought I'd disappeared. And the way Jessica's things were neatly arranged in the front hall told me she was still pretending to own what never belonged to her. But I didn't touch anything. I just walked in, sat in my old chair in the sunroom, and waited. 37 minutes later, Jessica pulled into the driveway, heels clicking up the walkway like she was walking into her kingdom. And when she opened the front door and saw me sitting there, legs crossed, coffee in hand, she froze like she'd seen a ghost. But I didn't give her the luxury of silence. "You're trespassing," I said calmly, without raising my voice, and she blinked, confused, maybe thinking she misheard. "Excuse me?" she said, voice rising. "This is my house," I replied, "and as of this morning I've officially rescinded the temporary occupancy agreement your husband filed under my authority, without my consent, might I add. So, unless you have a legal document stating otherwise, I suggest you call a moving service." She stared at me, then at the room, then back at me. "You can't do that," she said, but it came out weaker than I think she meant it to. "I already did," I said, pulling the rolled legal packet from my bag and placing it gently on the table between us. "Here's a copy for you, effective immediately. You've got 72 hours. Her jaw clenched, and for the first time, I saw the cracks in her designer armor, the panic behind her Botox. "Daniel won't allow this," she said, and I tilted my head. "Daniel no longer controls anything," I said. "Not the board, not the house, not the narrative. I let you both believe I was broken. That was your first mistake. Your second was underestimating how dangerous a woman becomes when she has nothing left to lose." Jessica didn't move. She didn't blink. She just stood there, completely still, and I let her stew in that silence for exactly 10 seconds before I stood, walked past her without looking back, and went upstairs. I didn't need to say more. The house spoke for itself now. That afternoon, Leonard sent me a video, footage from inside Harper & Sons' downtown office, showing a heated exchange between Daniel and 2 board members who'd just pulled out of a funding agreement. "We can't back a company with this kind of instability," one of them said, and I watched Daniel's face shift from confusion to desperation in a matter of seconds. He was trying to explain away the headlines, the silence, the disappearance, the reappearance, the rumor that his mother had just partnered with his father's fiercest rival and walked back into the industry like she'd never left. I didn't laugh, but I did replay it twice. That evening, the official investor withdrawal notices started rolling in, not all at once, but enough to make a dent. Jessica tried to host a crisis PR call, but no one showed. I know this because the Zoom invite was leaked, and the empty call recording was accidentally posted in a Slack thread by one of the interns. It went viral in exactly 4 hours. The Harper name wasn't just fading, it was collapsing. And I didn't have to touch a single wire. I just pulled out the foundation brick they forgot I owned. They called it a burn notice in the finance blogs. Harper matriarch torches legacy to reclaim control. But I didn't burn anything. I simply walked back into what was already mine and let the structure cave in under the weight of its own lies. That night, as I watched the lights of the city blink from my bedroom window, my phone buzzed once. Daniel. No message. Just his name. I didn't answer. I let it ring until it stopped. He would call again. They always do when the fire finally reaches the door. Daniel showed up at the house 2 days later, looking like he hadn't slept, his tie half loosened, shirt wrinkled, eyes bloodshot, and hands fidgeting like the little boy who used to hide behind my legs when his father raised his voice. But now he wasn't hiding from anyone, except maybe the reflection of the man he'd allowed himself to become. And when I opened the door and didn't invite him in, he hesitated just long enough to understand that the rules had changed, that his access was no longer assumed, and for the first time in years, he waited for permission before stepping inside the house he once tried to take from me. I didn't ask how he found out about the eviction notice I served Jessica, or the board members who were quietly pulling their loyalty piece by piece. Leonard had likely made sure the message was loud enough to reach them, but quiet enough to make them feel cornered by their own ignorance. And I didn't have to ask what he wanted, because the moment he stepped into the living room and saw his childhood photo still sitting on the fireplace mantel, his face cracked. "Mom," he said, but I held up a hand before he could play the role of the wounded son. "You're not here to apologize," I said. "You're here because you're scared." He didn't deny it. He sat down slowly, like someone visiting an old battlefield, and for a long time we just stared at each other. Years of silence folded into the air between us. "Everything's falling apart," he finally said, voice barely above a whisper. "The board's turning on me. Clients are leaving. Jessica, she's talking about cutting her losses." "She should," I said, and he flinched. "You think I wanted this?" he asked. And there it was, the self-pity, the fragile panic, wrapped in guilt that shows up only when the consequences become public. "No," I said. "I think you allowed it. Which is worse." He nodded slowly, biting the inside of his cheek like he was chewing on years of excuses. "We thought you were stepping back. You never showed up to meetings." "Because I was grieving your father," I said. "And because I trusted you." "And what did you do with that trust, Daniel?" His eyes filled, and he shook his head. "It wasn't supposed to go like this. Jess kept saying if we just pushed a little harder, if we kept control, it would all settle down. She wanted me erased," I said. "And you stood by." "I didn't know how bad it had gotten," he said, and I stood up. "That's the problem. You didn't want to know. You didn't ask. You let her steer until the car was already on fire." "So what now?" he asked. "You just destroy everything?" "I didn't destroy anything," I said. "I just stopped protecting you from the damage you caused yourselves." He looked up at me, the tears now just sitting there, waiting for permission to fall. "Can you help me?" I didn't answer. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stood at the window while he sat in silence behind me. I thought about every sleepless night, every meeting I was excluded from, every time my name was dropped from a document like it was dead weight. I thought about the kitchen table at his wedding. I thought about the lock changed on my door. I turned back to him and said, "You're going to call every board member. Not your lawyer. You, personally. You're going to admit what you did. You're going to tell them I was forced out illegally, and then you're going to step down." He blinked. "Step down?" "As CEO," I said. "Effective immediately. And don't ask me who's replacing you." "You?" he asked. "No," I said. "Me." The silence hit harder than any scream ever could. "And Jessica?" he asked. "She'll be dealt with separately," I said. "But she won't survive this. You know that." He nodded slowly, like he was signing something in his head he couldn't take back. I handed him a piece of paper, typed instructions, contact names, talking points. He took it without question. "You'll still be part of the family," I said, and he looked up, hopeful, "but not the company." "I understand," he whispered. I don't think you do, I said. But you will. That night, the company website was updated. Jessica's name was removed from the executive page. Daniel's title changed to Transitional Advisor. And under the new leadership tab appeared my name, Evelyn Harper, Interim CEO, Founder Emeritus. I didn't gloat. I didn't drink champagne. I just closed the laptop, turned off the light, and went to bed. The collapse was complete. Now came the rebuilding, on my terms. The day Daniel stepped down, the office felt like a room where someone had finally opened a window after years of stale air, not because the mood lifted, but because everything rotten was finally exposed, and I walked through those glass doors. Not like a guest, but like the woman who helped design every beam, every policy, every profit margin that had built it before it was turned into a playground for entitlement and vanity. And I didn't announce myself. I didn't schedule a meeting. I just walked in, wearing the same navy blazer from the press. Release. Heels echoing through the marble lobby, and I watched every assistant, every junior exec, every shareholder stare like they were seeing a ghost who wasn't just back, but in charge. Leonard met me in the boardroom with a single nod and stepped aside as I took the seat at the head of the table where I belonged, not because I'd fought for it recently, but because I had earned it long before any of them knew what a quarterly report even was, and as I reviewed the company's books, I saw every shortcut Jessica had taken. Funds misallocated to shell firms, inflated consultant invoices, vanity branding with no ROI. And it wasn't just negligence, it was greed, dressed in designer labels. And I didn't hesitate. I filed a formal request for a full financial audit and submitted it directly to the legal department, CCing every board member and bypassing Daniel completely. 2 days later, Jessica's name hit the internal investigation memo, and suddenly, everyone who once bragged about being on Team Jess couldn't remember the last time they'd actually seen her at her desk. And I didn't celebrate. I just worked, long hours, hard hours, because I needed the company not only to survive, but to be proof that I was never the problem, that age was never a liability, that motherhood didn't make me soft, it made me strategic. Daniel sent flowers to my office the next morning with a handwritten card that said, "Thank you for giving me a chance to fix what I broke," and I left them on the window ledge unopened, not out of cruelty, but because forgiveness isn't owed just because someone finally realizes the damage they've done, and I wasn't ready to hand him peace wrapped in ribbon. That weekend, he showed up again, not at the house but at the office, waited outside the building for over an hour until I came out. And when I saw him standing there in a plain hoodie and sneakers, not the polished executive costume he used to wear, something inside me softened just a degree. "I'm not here to ask for anything," he said, eyes low. "I just wanted to say I was wrong, about everything." I didn't respond. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a photo, me and him from his 10th birthday, cake on his face, my arm around him. "I found this in a drawer, made me wonder how we got from there to here." "Because you stopped asking what I needed," I said. "And I stopped reminding you. I should have protected you," he said. "You should have remembered I never needed protection," I replied. We stood in silence for a long time, the city noise passing around us like we were frozen in. "I'm going back to school," he said finally. "Finance ethics. I don't want this to be how I'm remembered." "It won't be," I said, "but you'll carry it." "I should," he replied. "I want to." He handed me the photo and started to walk away, but stopped. "I don't expect us to be fixed," he said, "but I hope one day I'll be invited back. Maybe not as a son," I said, "but as a man trying to be better. There's a chance." He nodded and left. No theatrics, no tears, just quiet resolve. And I went back inside with the photo still in my hand and tucked it into my drawer under a stack of new client proposals. That night, I didn't drink wine or stare out the window or replay old memories. I sat at my desk and finalized the termination papers for Jessica, signed them, and sent them with a single line of text. Effective immediately. Regret does not equal immunity. Because regret is cheap and respect is earned back one hard day at a time. The final piece fell into place 6 weeks later when Jessica's termination paperwork cleared and the final audit confirmed what I already knew, that she had siphoned more than just company funds. She had siphoned trust, culture, and dignity from a business that was once built on loyalty. And when the board voted to pursue legal action, I didn't attend the meeting, didn't make a speech, didn't even gloat. I simply sent a 3-word statement through legal. Proceed without delay, because justice doesn't need a spotlight when it's this overdue. And with her gone and Daniel rebuilding his life far away from the company he once thought he'd inherited, I finally had the breathing room to do what mattered most. Repair the company from the inside out without the noise of false heirs clawing at my shoulders. I restructured the leadership, brought back 2 of the original department heads who had quietly retired early when Jessica stepped in, and I launched a mentorship program under my name for women over 50 returning to business, because legacy doesn't mean clinging to power, it means giving power with intention. And for the first time in years, I walked into that office not feeling like a survivor or a fighter, but like a builder again. But the real moment, the one that mattered more than any press headline or board vote, came quietly on a Sunday afternoon at a backyard birthday party for my granddaughter Ava, who had just turned 9, and I wasn't there as an obligation, or an afterthought or a tolerated presence. I was there because she asked for me directly. And when I arrived, Daniel was already there helping hang streamers. No Jessica in sight, no tension in the air, just the soft sound of kids laughing and the smell of grilled burgers. He looked at me and gave a quiet nod, not of apology this time, but of steady respect, and I nodded back. Later, during cake time, Ava stood on a chair and pointed to the head of the table. "Grandma Evelyn sits here," she said, loud enough for every adult to hear. And Daniel didn't flinch, didn't try to redirect her. He pulled the chair out and patted it like it was obvious. And when I sat down, it wasn't ceremonial, it was natural. And when she passed me the knife to cut the cake, her little hand wrapped around mine, I realized this was the seat I'd earned. Not in a kitchen behind closed doors, not in a corporate office buried in footnotes, but at a table where legacy meant something more than shares and signatures. After the candles were blown out and the sugar rush kicked in, I walked inside for a moment of quiet, and Daniel followed, holding 2 cups of lemonade. "It's not the champagne you used to pour," he said, handing me one, "but it's honest." I took a sip and nodded. "Honest is good. She talks about you all the time," he added. "Says you're the strongest woman she knows." "Then she's already smarter than her father was at her age," I said, and he laughed. Not the nervous laugh from before, but a real one. "I'm glad you're still here," he said. "I thought I'd lost you." "You almost did," I replied, "but you remembered in time." We stood in silence for a bit, watching Ava run across the yard, wearing a paper crown and dragging a balloon like a trophy, and it hit me then. Legacy isn't what you leave behind, it's what you refuse to let be erased. I had lost things, years, trust, time, but I had gained something heavier, stronger, unshakable. My place, my voice, my seat at the damn table, and I wasn't giving it up for anyone ever again.